Alright, thanks for coming back. We're working on the 2016 Hyundai Veloster today. Today's goal or project, or whatever you want to call it, will be to install the front sway bar, bushings, and end links. Now, this is a Pierce Motorsport front sway bar. Their bushings they sent me originally were black, and I went on the Energy website and ordered me some red ones because that's kind of my theme. And I've got some white sway bar end links that I ordered. So, in order to get this thing in, first we have to remove the old one. So, I've already removed the old sway bar end links on both sides. The next thing I got to do is reach up in there and get those bolts out. And then after that, we need to drop basically this whole front subframe assembly. So, one bolt on this side right there needs to come out. That's where your rigid collar goes, by the way. So we're going to drop that bolt, one exactly on the other side, and then we're going to have to remove my cross beam. So the 4 bolts, 2 on each side here in the rear, and then where it connects in the front, there is that bolt, and then this one right next to it needs to come down, and that will allow us to lower that subframe down. My exhaust is already removed because I'm putting a new exhaust on, so my videos are a little out of sync right now. I'm trying to do multiple things all at once, so apologize for the confusion. But yeah, you will need, if you are not planning on doing your exhaust, you will need to disconnect the exhaust from the cat pipe because you'll need to have some access. The other thing you're going to have to do is unbolt the steering rack, because from what I've found out, the sway bar has to be fished underneath. So we'll see. So I'm going to try to get some video of the bolts being removed and things being dropped. So really don't need to put anything underneath here to support the car. I'm going to get my jack out just so when I go to put everything back I don't have to fight with it. But for the most part, it's all going to be held by the suspension anyway, so it's not going to go anywhere, and the motor is held by the mount. So we are going to have to release the bottom motor mount also, just so that this can drop down about, I think it's about 2 or 3 inches, and then you just got to fish it through there. So we will get onto that. Alright, so here's a little different angle. So I'm going to remove these 2 bolts. Now, I was told you can remove this one, but either way works. Because I've got tight clearance on this side, I'm just going to leave this center bolt and just pull these 2. If you had a stock one, the stock dog bone actually goes back into this about an inch. So it is easier to remove the front one. Mine is flat on the back, so not going to worry about that. And if you look where that yellow bar is right there and see that bolt just to the right of it, that is the 2 bolts we're going to need. This front bolt here, we don't touch. So, have to remove my yellow bar, 2 back bolts, 2 back bolts, and then the upper bolt. And that will bring this whole frame down, supposedly, to give us room. So, here we go. Alright, so I took the 2 bolts out. You can see that that moves freely. You can see that the motor moves freely. Nothing's connected, nothing's hanging. So, alright, next 2 bolts. I'm going to go ahead and start pulling that yellow frame up out of there, just because it's easier to get it out of the way before I start working. So, I'm going to do that. And I don't really think you want to watch me unscrewing bolts. It's not like it's that big a deal. And you can always watch the video of when I installed it. So, alright, I'll be back once I get it removed. Alright, so I got the collars off, or the bolts off, I should say, not collars. I got the bolts down. I got the cross member out. So, as I said, this isn't going anywhere. It's not supported by anything except the struts, all the suspension work. So it's really not going to fall on you. So now the next trick is to reach up in here a little bit and try to get those sway bar bolts out. And then I'm going to have to try to figure out an angle to get to the bolts that hold the steering rack so I can get to that. So my next little part here will be getting the sway bar bolts out of there. Alright, on to the next project. Alright, so as you can see, the sway bar bushing is out. I took the wheel off because it makes life a lot easier. So with the wheel off, you can reach in there with a size 14. I used a deep, just a deep socket, size 14. Get the nut and the bolt out of there, and then there you go. So next, I'm going to crawl up underneath there and see about getting the 4 bolts that hold the rack to this subframe so I can make some space. Alright, on to the next part. Alright, little update. I took the flex pipe out between the cat and the regular exhaust, and now look at all the room I got. Tons of room. I can actually get my hands up there to do some work. I don't have little hands, as you can see. So if you're having a clearance issue, you can go ahead and remove that as well. What I did is I just unplugged the O2 sensor at the top and then unclipped it all the way down, and just dropped the pipe completely out of my way and gave myself a ton more room. It added about another 10 minutes to the project so far. I'll put a total time at the end of the video. Alright, I got the last 2 bolts to get to. This one's pretty much out. And the other one is over here, and I haven't even loosened it yet. So I've got the back 2, just working on the front 2. Alright, as you can see, the cradle is supported by the front knuckles down there at the bottom. It has come down, and look at all the room you got to pull that sway bar out of there. Now in the video I saw they did it on a ramp or a lift, and they were able to squeeze that bar maybe 2 inches. With it sitting down here on the ground, I can put my roll around jack back up underneath this, slide it all back up into place, and it is done deal. So much easier. So yeah, it's a little bit more work, I guess. I'm not sure, but if you're going to do an exhaust, why don't you do your front sway bar at the same time? Alright, I'm going to get my other sway bar in here and get things lined up. And it looks like, since it's already down this far, I might as well just go ahead and put the bushings in and secure it while it's all on the ground. Okay, back in a minute. Alright, a little quick side note. The little strap that comes with the new bushings, whether they're the red ones or the black ones, because they come from the same place, you may need to widen out the area where the bolt slips through. One issue I had was the bolt stud that's at the top. The strap would not go over, so what I did is I just took a drill bit on either side of it, give it a little love, and now it fits both sides. So if you need to do that, I would do that in advance. If not, that's really going to slow down your project a bit. Alright, just like that. Bolts are tightened down, sway bars in. If I did it correctly, the little oddball shape is on the driver's side. I assume that's where it goes. It's sort of matched up to the other bar, so that's what I'm going with, and that's what the videos look like I saw. So, of course, you know, limited instructions on certain parts, so kind of learn as you go. It would suck to put it all back together and find out nothing lines up. Alright, I'm going to slide the jack under this cradle, jack it back up into place, put the 4 bolts at the corners, those 2 front ones up there, and the 2 in the back, and then I'm going to re-bolt the rack to the thing last. That'll just make it easier. Alright, I'm going to move the jack, be back. Alright, so I have the 4 corner bolts in, the back corner, not the one that my crossbar goes to, but the back corner and the uppers. They're all in hand, finger tight, that's it. It's still resting on the jack, but it doesn't need to be there. This gives me room to put the rack bolts back in with everything still loose. Once the 4 rack bolts are back in and tightened down, I'll put the intermediate pipe back on, and then I will put my cross member back on because I've got rigid collars for these corners as well. So once the cross member's in, then this whole frame will be tightened back down. I think it was 85 pounds, I'll have to look it up, but at least these 4, the big one here and the 2 uppers, so those I'll torque back down. I'm not sure about this one. These outer ones weren't very tight to start with, so when I took them off they were just beyond snug, so didn't seem torqued, but definitely this one will be. So alright, so next is to get the bolts back up in there and getting that tightened down. Okay, so steering rack is tightened up. The sway bar is in and tightened up. What I did is, right before I snugged this down, I pushed this sway bar as far forward as I could go, and if you look, it just clears the steering rack, just barely, and it's like a hair. So, alright. So, next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to finish reinstalling the subframe. I'm going to get all the collars back in, lined up, and get my cross member back in. So, back in a minute.